Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Some kids making their way through Indiana's juvenile justice system are slipping through the cracks. They're supposed to get a public defender to help with their cases, but that doesn't always happen. Reporter Barbara Brozier is here with more. And Barbara, what does that mean for the kids?
Well, Joe, some kids are ending up in the Department of Correction when they shouldn't. And sometimes it's for an incident an adult would never serve prison time for. It's a problem states across the country are facing because of a lack of resources and understanding of juvenile courts and crimes. Some Indiana attorneys, though, are trying to change the trend.
I'm here to help if you guys need help, most definitely.
Joel Wieneke is standing in front of a classroom at Logansport Juvenile Correctional Facility. He's talking to a group of boys who arrived here within the past week. They range in age from 12 to 17 and sport the same shaved heads and gray sweatsuits.
So right now is what we're going to do is we're going to talk as a group, but you guys got to raise your hand if you want to talk to me, okay? And we're going to try to figure out what you guys know about the system it is that you just went through, how it is that you came to be here at the DOC.
Wieneke isn't a teacher, but an attorney with the Indiana Public Defender Council's Juvenile Defense Project. The group developed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Correction to let attorneys visit 2 juvenile facilities in the state every other week. Wieneke drives more than 4 hours round trip to make sure the kids who are serving time in the DOC had proper legal representation.
It sounds like everybody in the room had an attorney, right? Because that's one of the things that I want to find out and make sure that you guys know and understand that you had an attorney. I've met with 7 kids so far since last April who made it all the way here and didn't have an attorney, at least at some point in their case, when they probably should have.
It's hard to gauge how often that's happening in Indiana because there's little statewide data available on juvenile defense. The state itself collects little information on kids who go through court or end up in the DOC. What we do know from judicial service reports is that about a quarter of juveniles waived their right to counsel in 2015. The National Juvenile Defender Center worked with state task forces to complete an assessment of Indiana's system, but that happened more than a decade ago. The analysis took information from 11 of Indiana's 92 counties and points to issues with how and when attorneys are appointed to juvenile cases, and the high number of kids waiving their right to an attorney. What Wieneke knows from his visits to Logansport is that some of those problems still persist.
They show up at the Department of Correction oftentimes not knowing and understanding things that they should understand having gone through that process.
Wieneke has no shortage of stories about kids who ended up in the DOC when they probably shouldn't have. He estimates about 45% of the boys who sit through the group orientation request to meet with him one-on-one because they have questions about their situations. Wieneke skims their case files quickly before they have a private meeting.
I talked to a young man not too long ago who, after sitting through orientation, he wanted to meet with me one-on-one, and he came in and he said, I don't think I had an attorney. And so we had to talk through who were the people in the courtroom, and the only thing he could say was the person in a suit with all the paperwork was sitting at another table.
There's a long list of similar stories, like the girl who lied to a police officer about her name, which would carry a maximum penalty of about 180 days for an adult.
She's been under court supervision for that offense for 3 years, had multiple probation violations for things such as skipping school, but that it's kind of hard to see that that should be the hook, a B misdemeanor, to keep court supervision over her for 3 full years.
Based on conversations like that, Wieneke connects some kids with an appellate attorney or the state public defender's office. His colleague goes through a similar process at another juvenile facility.
So we've had about over 400 kids go through the orientation. About 40% sign up to talk to us. And then out of that, about 10% we've referred on for appeals.
The facility visits are just a portion of Indiana's plan for improving juvenile defense. Attorneys are also going to counties to help them reform the way they deliver juvenile justice. And there's an effort to give attorneys more juvenile-specific training.
By the time the grant's over, we hope to have at least done training for attorneys in every single county.
But access to quality counsel isn't a problem unique to Indiana. It's happening across the country. The National Juvenile Defender Center says the practice of automatically appointing young people an attorney hasn't caught on everywhere.
67% of the states that we've been in, young people were not always waiving their right to counsel, but at least in some places were appearing at proceedings where their liberty interests were clearly at stake. Detention hearings, adjudication hearings, disposition hearings, without attorneys at their side.
Scally says the problem is systematic, and the lack of funding and consistency in Indiana only compounds it.
You look at the fact that there's no state-level entity that provides leadership, oversight, monitoring. There's no mandatory standards for counties to comply with that demand that young people get quality juvenile defense.
That's in the back of Wieneke's mind as he talks to these kids. Federal grant money supporting this program runs out next year, so he'll have to make his case to state legislators to support the program. He says there's evidence to show their efforts are working. The DOC released a couple of kids early after he discovered they shouldn't be there. But they're only dealing with a small number of the thousands of juvenile cases in Indiana.
We're trying to reach out to residential placements and secure detention facilities, which is a step down from the Department of Correction, to encourage them to get kids in touch with us who may have an issue, but we just can't, travel around and do this same orientation interview process at those facilities. It would take too much time.
The Indiana Supreme Court did come up with some funding that will help cover any gaps between when the federal grant runs out and when attorneys can make their case to state legislators for money.
All right, thank you very much, Barbara.